Hey, what's going on, DDO players? Axel here. Today I want to do a quest review for the Promise of Fire, which is the brand new free-to-play quest that dropped this week in Update 47. So it's free to play, everyone can access it. It is level 6 Heroic and level 27 Epic. It's located in the Searing Heights. The NPC quest giver is also right there in the Searing Heights, not too far from the entrance. So in this quest, before I get started, I want to tell you that I'm going to get into spoilers. So I guess if you want to just get the basic non-spoiler version of this, basically it's a trap intensive quest and a puzzle intensive quest. I would recommend that you have at least one person run it with you, make it a little bit easier if you have someone who can get through traps, when has good deck saves, can avoid taking trap damage. You're going to find that very helpful. So that's about all I can say without going deep into the mechanics and getting into spoilers, because I want to actually get into some of the quest mechanics here. So if you don't want any spoilers, then run the quest before you listen to this video, because from here on out, I'm going to get into spoiler stuff. Okay, so in the Promise of Fire, it is a quest that it incorporates mechanics we've seen before, but it puts a little bit of a different twist on it, particularly at the end. So when the quest starts out here, it's very similar to some other quests that we've seen in the game many times. So we've got several different crests that you've got to go and get. The layout of these crest rooms is a little bit different. I found that this quest in particular was actually really fun to solo blind, and that's how I ran it just now. I'm recording this immediately after running it blind for the first time. I ran it on Reaper 1 on my favorite soul. I was a bit above level, but still, I mean, I got a pretty good feel of the difficulty of the dungeon in any case. Okay, so basically, when you're running this, you've got the crest mechanic that we've seen in several other quests in the game, many other quests in the game. There is a few mini bosses, so like a scorpion, and there's a mechanic where you've got to drag it kind of to the end of this particular room, as you're seeing here, before it will actually die. That was quite interesting. I was able to figure that out pretty quickly. I found to be fairly straightforward. I think most people would probably figure that out. So the first crest is not too bad. Now, one of the real difficulties in this quest is getting I believe it's called the sword room, going through the sword room and getting the crest at the end there. So you've got to kind of get through a bunch of these Eberron style quests. So you've got the first room where you've got spikes sticking out of the floor. Not hard at all to get through that. Just pay attention. You've even got, before that, you've got a room with a boulder that kind of will knock you over. And actually, that boulder tends to be more of an aid than it is a thing you need to avoid, because it doesn't do much damage, and it actually knocks down this golem mini boss that's in that room as well. So when I was running this, it kept knocking that guy down, so it made it quite actually a lot easier to get through him. But the first trap room there, with the kind of the spikes that stick out and come up and come down, that's not too bad. Though I will say, for this room and for the other puzzle rooms, you gotta watch, because the hitboxes on the traps don't necessarily match the animation. So particularly that's bad on the boulder, but it's bad in the fire traps as well. So you need to be not just away from the fire and the spikes, but a little bit more than what you're visually seeing. So in any case, the first room is not too bad, though. It's pretty easy to get through the spikes. The next room, where you've got kind of the Eberron style swooshing blades coming down in pairs of 3, plus the fire traps, those take a little bit more of skill to get through. You've got to really pay attention. And also, one other thing I want to kind of do a minor complaint about is the vines really get in your way visually. So when going through the section, I had to scroll in and really almost go first person just so I didn't see them. But in any case, that next room is quite avoidable. So the traps are pretty avoidable, though you've got to be careful again with the hitboxes. But if you're even running this on my favorite soul, who has terrible saves, I was able to only get hit a couple times going through these traps, and thankfully it didn't do, like, it's not gonna one shot you probably if you have a decent amount of health. I have quite a bit of health on my favorite soul, and I'm running this on Reaper 1, so that is one good thing about this, is you aren't gonna get you can make a mistake, maybe two, and not die if you have a lot of health, but you will die probably with 3 hits. So just keep that in mind. At least on Reaper 1, I assume the trap damage is even worse on the higher Reapers, and probably better on Elite and Hard, but only run this on Reaper 1 so far, so have yet to see that. But that room, not too bad. You can get through it. The following room is basically you can't avoid taking damage. You've got the dart traps. Those aren't that bad just because the damage isn't bad. But in any case, I kind of like these 3 rooms. I really like them actually because they did a good job to where you can get through it without being like a high dex trapper type, and afford to take some damage even on Reaper and actually get through it. So it doesn't like force you to have a trapper, although having a trapper type person in, I obviously can't search for traps on my favorite soul, so I assume a lot of these traps could be disabled, if not all of them, with a with someone with a good search and disable device skill. But they did a good job of balancing this so you can even run it on Reaper 1 and get through it, possibly without taking too much damage. And if you have a hireling there with you to raise, that helps as well. And there's even a resurrection shrine after the first section of these 3 traps, so you can even run back and use that. So it's quite doable to get through that. So they did a good balance of having traps, but at the same time, for people who don't have trap skills, you can still get through it, although it's harder. So with that said, let's talk now about the optional room. And I probably should have talked about this before the traps, but there's a kind of a basement to lower area where there's a breakable section of the floor and you can drop down, and there's an optional down there with the puzzle wheels. And if you search around the rooms, in each room, well, for the first 2 puzzle wheels, you'll find in each room the little symbol stuck hidden somewhere in the wall that tells you one of the lever combinations that you need to use. And when you get to the 3rd wheel, you actually have to go to the following room to actually find it. It took me a while of just kind of running around looking at walls to find this. But if you go in the 3rd room there, the last room, you'll find the 3rd little insignia on the wall. So it gives you the 3 symbols. However, the catch is that these symbols don't align with the wheel of the room they're in. And that is, I don't know how I feel about that, because I ran around this room for a while wondering how I had screwed up, because I had put the symbol of the icon that was in the room with the wheels, or in the case of the 3rd one, the room right next to it. And I was like, why is the optional room not opening? And then I thought, hey, I bet it's like Too Hot to Handle, where the symbol does not align exactly with the room or with the wheel it's next to, or the puzzle piece it's next to. You got to actually invert it, and that's exactly how you do it. Is you have to take basically rotate it all one room. So you've got to actually plug in the symbols, not for the room that you found the symbol in, but you got to use the symbol for the room that is I guess you basically just rotate it back one to get the solution. And after all that, I didn't know what that opened. I thought it might be a required room at this point, but it opens an optional room, and on heroic at least you get all of 216 XP. Like, for all the time I spent trying to figure that out, and granted, I don't think the puzzle combination changes, so if I run this again, unless it's randomized, I'll be able to do it in, just a minute. But even if it is randomized, then I know how to do it at this point, so it'll be really a lot faster. But I'm kind of disappointed with some of the XP values. I mean, why is only 216 XP? Like, give us at least like 1,000 or 1,500 on the heroic version to make it kind of worth doing. But in any case, it did just open an optional room, which if I had known that, well, I was doing everything for purposes of actually, flower sifting the quest, but in future runs, knowing that it's only 216 XP, I'm just going to ignore it. But anyways, enough about that room. I don't know how I feel about the whole -1 thing, just because in terms of the location of the symbol in relation to the lever, just because it's just not very intuitive, though it kind of hits that middle ground where you can figure it out, but at the same time, there's no reason for it to really work that way. So I don't know. It just feels a little arbitrary. Felt the same thing with Too Hot to Handle. How the puzzle, I guess the location of the light doesn't line up with the symbol you're mashing it to. You have to like take it and then move it back one position. It just feels a little arbitrary to me, but it's a very minor complaint though. It's still you're very much able to figure that out in not too much time. Although, I did spend a bit of time in there figuring that out, but I was able to do that without consulting, blind without consulting the wiki or anything like that. So I think most people should, if as long as you play around with it enough, you'll be able to figure that out. But let's move on to the final room. So after the kind of 3-piece puzzle or trap room that I talked about before, you get to this. You get to a light puzzle, not a light puzzle, but a tile puzzle, and then you get to this red and black checkerboard styled room. And the light puzzle, fairly straightforward. We've seen a million light puzzles in DDO, but you get to the last room and you get kind of this vague DM text, I guess, or speak, where the DM says basically stay in the light and you'll be fine. And that is your clue as to what to do in that room. So at first I was like, what does that mean? I knew it had to relate to what you do, because after this tile puzzle, as you can see here on the screen, you get to this checkerboard room and there's little spike slots in each of these little blocks. So in each of the red and black squares, there are spike traps that will pop up if you step on the wrong tile. At first I was like, okay, stay in the light. So I was looking to the ceiling, looking at some of the light peeking in, trying to figure out what to do. My first attempt, I was like, okay, it says stay in the light and stay out of the dark. So I was like, okay, so I guess I just avoid the black squares. So I started, and that didn't work. I didn't quite die, almost died. Actually, I think I did die. But luckily, I had a hireling there, and you can actually run back to the there's still a resurrection shrine. As long as you die kind of in the first half of that room, you can barely make it back to the res shrine. So I was able to do that. But in any case, the stay in the red squares, avoid the dark, aka the black squares, didn't work. So then I looked to the ceiling for some of the light draining down, and I couldn't figure it out. So I actually had to, and this is the first time in this quest where I had to consult the wiki. So to kind of get the answer, because I couldn't. I really stood there for a while trying to figure this out, and I just couldn't. So the answer as to what you do in terms of what squares are safe and what squares are not is you have to look back at the tile puzzle, and the tile puzzle squares line up with the squares in this room. So if you look back at the tile puzzle, the squares that you lit up while solving the tile puzzle are the squares that are safe. So the lit up squares are the light, because the tile puzzle runs a beam of light from the start to the end to solve it. So anywhere that beam of light is lights up that square. So basically stay in the light, aka stay in the path of the solution for that tile puzzle. So if you stay in those squares, you're fine. So then I can't remember how to do that, and I think this is a case where having a second player is really nice, because you could have one player, and I was soloing this, so I couldn't do this. But if you have a duo or multiple people in your group, you can have one person just move the puzzles to light where you need them to be, and the next person can be walking to the end of the room pulling the levers, because there are 4 levers on each side of the 2 on each side of the room, and you've got to not just solve the puzzles to where you can get through it from start to finish, but you've got to light up squares also so you can actually make it to those levers on the side. So for example, I solved the puzzle, it's not hard, the tile puzzle, but my solution that I came up with did not run the light squares where in front of the levers that you have to pull. So you can't just solve the tile puzzle. You have to solve it in a way that, if you're soloing, you have to solve it in a way that gives you access to the levers. And if you were to have 2 people in your group, you can have one person just, you don't need to have the thing solved. You can just light up the squares you need to. You can't do this when soloing because the gate comes down and blocks access to the room. So that would be nice if you could do that if you had a second player to kind of light up the squares you need to. But in any case, I was able to kind of cheat a little bit by buffing myself, my HP up, and just kind of, as you can see here, just kind of pulling the lever in between the spikes hitting me. So I kind of fudged my way through it, although I think I probably could have gone back, and I'm sure there's a solution that lights up all the squares in front of the levers, as well as solves the whole puzzle and gives you access from start to finish. But I didn't want to go back and do that, so whatever. But in any case, I think that this room is actually very creative. I don't remember anything like this in DDO exactly, so it was great. The only problem really is that you have to, if you don't get it, which I didn't get, if you don't get the reference, so where it says stay out of the dark and stay in the light from the DM, if you just didn't hear the DM, and that's very possible for people who have the DM voice turned off, if you miss the DM's text there, or you just weren't paying attention, or for whatever reason you missed it, then you're kind of screwed. You have no way to figure out what to do if you're going in blind. So, and I think a lot of people, probably most people, aren't going to get the hint. I didn't. No, I didn't get the hint. When they said stay in the light, I had no idea that referred back to the tile puzzle in the previous room. So that's the one problem. If you don't get that, then you're not gonna know what to do without consulting the wiki or whatever. So yeah, that's an issue. But I think I can't really say this is a complaint, because I think the DM text is enough of a hint, and it's a really tough position for the developers, because they've got to give you a little bit of a hint, so you kind of have an arrow that's guiding you towards what to do, but they can't make it so obvious to where they're just giving you instructions and how to solve the puzzle, because that takes all the challenge out. So I think they did a pretty decent job in kind of meeting that middle ground, to where you got to think a little bit to get it, and if you don't get it, that sucks. But if you really can't get it and you keep dying, then you can either, you can kind of strongman your way through it if you're a lot of HP. There's probably ways to get around it. I imagine if you're running this on Epic, you can use like your Leap of Faith or your Caneth Boots Propulsion to just kind of jet over it, I would imagine. So there's probably ways of getting around it, but in any case, it's doable even if you don't get it through some way, I think. Okay, so enough of that. Let's get to the end fight. I mean, the end fight's nothing too special, really, just undead, basically, and that's it. Quest is over. So overall, I mean, it's actually a really good quest. It's very creative, and that's one thing that I'm really happy to see. Although not creative in the sense that they're still kind of reusing the same the same puzzles we've seen from time and time again, like tile puzzles, although they did reinvent them in a creative way. So I have to give them props for that. Although I think one of my pet peeves has been them continually to reuse the same puzzles, but in this case they did reinvent them and use them in a slightly different way. So I have to definitely give them props for that. One thing I was surprised at is that this quest actually does not seem to tie into the expansion at all, unless some of the lore went over my head, which it could have. You all comment and let me know if it did. But basically the lore, the story of this quest is you are the NPC that gives you the quest is a relic hunter, and they're looking for this relic, the Eye of Fernia, and that's what you find at the end of the quest for them. So basically, as an adventurer, your job is to go in, find this relic, and come back. So I don't know if that ties into the expansion at all, but at least from what I read, and I read all the DM text, I didn't see any. So you all let me know. But yeah, overall, it's actually a very good quest. I highly recommend that you go in. Hopefully you went in blind, because it is a pretty good experience. Although one thing I will say is that with this quest, I see a lot of people probably skipping it as they're leveling, just because there's a lot easier, faster quests to run for the XP. I mean, the XP, I think I got 8 from doing this on Reaper 1. I think I got 8K or something at the end. So the XP wasn't, it wasn't amazing, but at the same time, it wasn't, I guess it wasn't horrible either, but it was just kind of okay XP. But for the headache you have with the puzzle rooms and all the traps, I think a lot of people will probably avoid this. The people that are just into leveling as efficiently as possible. But I did find it to be quite an enjoyable quest. Good, well, very well designed, very creative. So good job, devs. I really like this one. It's nice that it's free to play for everybody, so everyone can run it. So guys, yeah, that's going to be it for this video. Let me know what you think about this quest. These are just kind of my quick thoughts after literally just soloing it for the first time blind. So guys, that's going to be it for this video. Again, let me know what you think about the quest. I'll be interested in reading that, guys. That's going to be it for this video. Hope you all enjoyed. I'll see you next time. Have a good one, and take care.